Ever since Inception came out, its ending has been the subject of what is perhaps the most sweatily debated question in modern cinema: is Cobb still dreaming? And over the years, Christopher Nolan has done the thing auteurs shouldn't have to do and posited a correct answer.
No, I think it was Emma who sort of pointed out the correct answer really is that the character, Leo's character, the point of the shot is the character doesn't care.
But why doesn't Cobb care? Kind of a strange resolution, considering the whole reason he abandoned life in limbo is because
It wasn't so bad at first feeling like gods. The problem was knowing that none of it was real. Eventually, it just became impossible for me to live like that.
it always irked me to think Cobb left family life in limbo because it wasn't real, only to apparently settle for family life years later, regardless of whether it's real or not. And this continued to bug me until one day I made a connection. In an interview with the BFI, a moderator comments on how, during his time studying literature, Nolan encountered and was greatly influenced by the most philosophical of short story writers, Jorge Luis Borges. And as soon as I read that, I felt like, man, I really should have thought of this a long time ago, because the similarities between their work, especially in Inception, are undeniable. Nolan conceives of the mind's inner space as a labyrinth. Borges not only has a collection of shorts called Labyrinths, but uses the term obsessively in his works as a metaphor for the mind, the universe, time, fate, all those grand abstractions. Inception depicts impossible contradictory architecture, staircases that loop, cities folding in on each other. Borges' story The Library of Babel is about one big contradictory structure. Inception introduced audiences to the concept of nested realities, of living out years inside minutes, which is the premise of Borges' short The Secret Miracle. Inception is about people who can no longer tell whether they're in reality or inside someone else's dream, or whether they've simply replaced one with the other.
The dream has become the reality.
Again, the central concept of Borges' work, the circular ruins. Even the logo of Nolan's production company, Syncope, is a labyrinth, probably a nod to Borges. The parallels run deep because both these artists are, at their core, bewitched by the same thing: ideas.
What is the most resilient parasite? An idea. Resilient, highly contagious. Once an idea has taken hold of the brain, it's almost impossible to eradicate.
Borges spent much of his writing life ruminating on how ideas factor into the distinction between real and unreal, and where that takes him is the same place it takes Nolan at the end of Inception, and it explains why it no longer matters whether Cobb is dreaming. Well, to break that down, we're gonna have to revisit the ballsiest heist film ever made, work through a couple of mind-bending short stories, and ponder a deceptively vexing question: what's more real, a book or the story inside it? Let's dive in. But first, a quick recap, and this is gonna be a doozy. Inception follows Cobb, a dream thief who extracts corporate secrets by infiltrating his target's subconscious during dreams, a profession that has left him a fugitive exiled from his children. A powerful businessman named Saito offers Cobb a chance to clear his record and return home, provided he successfully performs Inception, the nearly impossible task of planting an idea in a target's mind. Cobb assembles a team of specialists to target Robert Fisher, the heir to a rival energy empire, aiming to plant the idea that Fisher should break up his father's company. The team plunges through 3 levels of dreams within a dream: a rainy city, a shifting hotel, and a snowy fortress. But 2 things threaten the mission. Fisher's subconscious has been militarized against exactly this kind of intrusion, and Cobb's unresolved guilt keeps manifesting as his dead wife Mal, sabotaging everything from the inside. When Fisher drops into limbo, an infinite subconscious void where Cobb spent decades with his wife previously, Cobb has to dive in after him. Then he finally confronts what he's been running from. He was responsible for Mal's death, having once incepted her into believing the real world was a dream. He lets her and his guilt go, the mission succeeds, Fisher breaks up the company, and Cobb finally returns home to his children. But the question lingers: has he found reality, or does it even matter? The end. The thread linking Borges and Nolan is idealism. In the strict philosophical sense, idealism is the belief that reality is mental rather than material, that the physical world only exists because it's perceived. Now, neither Borges nor Nolan quite argue for this position, but both are fascinated by its implications, that the boundary between mind and world is blurry, and that an idea, given enough force, can reshape or even replace reality. This is actually a thesis I've been developing across several videos, what in my Oppenheimer review I called Nolanian idealism, the conceptual core running through his whole filmography. Let me break it down, spoiler warning. In Memento, Leonard clings to the false idea that his wife's killer is still at large because without it he has no identity and no purpose. In Insomnia, Burr offers to destroy incriminating evidence as Dormer dies, so his legacy, the idea of him as a righteous detective, can outlive the messy truth. In The Prestige, Angier is obsessed with the power of illusion, that beautiful deceptions can enchant what is otherwise a mundane material existence. In Batman Begins, Bruce acknowledges the limits of what he can accomplish as a man, but as an idea, as a symbol, he can save Gotham.
As a man, I'm flesh and blood. I can be ignored, I can be destroyed, but as a symbol, I can be incorruptible.
Oh, and Roz says this.
Have to become an idea!
In The Dark Knight, the false idea of Harvey Dent as a hero sustains hope and remakes the city entirely. And by the end of the trilogy, the myth of a self-sacrificial Batman and the ability of that symbol to pass into new hands brings Gotham to a more stable status quo. In Interstellar, perhaps our most sacred idea, love, transcends space-time and saves the whole species. And in Oppenheimer, what is often dismissed as merely theory, whether it's the Marxist ideas animating Gene's party meetings or the theoretical physics developed at Los Alamos, proves capable of reshaping the world forever. And Tenet, I've honestly only seen it once and I don't know, man. Nolanian idealism is at its most literal in Inception. An idea is planted inside a man's head and a global corporation dissolves. A mental concept changes the material world. Nolanian idealism, stated plainly, is the notion that an idea is the most real and most powerful thing there is. So if ideas, things that exist purely in mental space, are as real, maybe even more so, as anything in the material world, then we would expect Cobb to be perfectly content living lifetime after lifetime in limbo. And even if he briefly wavers, we might interpret the ending as him settling for whatever layer of reality he landed in, because as long as he can see his children's faces, that mental version of them should be as real as anything else. But he doesn't stay in limbo, and that's not what the ending means. The key to what it does mean is in Borges. See, Borges, like Nolan, was torn between materialism and idealism. He was fascinated by philosophers who asked whether the physical world exists at all outside of our minds, particularly George Berkeley, who believed that matter on its own, without anyone perceiving it, straight up doesn't exist. But Borges wasn't exactly a true believer. He was drawn to idealism the way you might be drawn to a beautiful argument that you can't quite trust. And where that tension takes him is the same place Inception arrives at, as best captured in his short story, Tlon Uqbar Orbis Tertius. The story follows the discovery of an encyclopedia written by a secret society of intellectuals, describing a fictional planet called Tlon. On Tlon, the entire civilization is built around Berkeley's idealism. Because nothing exists independently of perception, their language has no nouns, only verbs and adjectives, because to say a noun would be to suggest an object exists outside of someone's mind, which is a big no-no. Any suggestion that matter persists between perspectives is considered a heresy, as exemplified by the scandal of the copper coins. Basically, one man loses some coins, then days later another man finds them. But since on Tlon, lost objects are believed to simply cease to exist when unperceived, this is unacceptable. So they resort to inventing super convoluted theories, like that all the men are actually a single universal mind perceiving different coins at different times. This is very clearly Borges taking the piss out of idealism. So given this buffoonery, it's materialism all the way, right? Things are there whether or not we perceive them. Well, not quite. Because when the encyclopedia is discovered in a Memphis library and mass distributed, in almost an instant it becomes a global cult. Quote, almost at once the real world gave way to the philosophy of Tlon. The truth is, it was longing to give way. 10 years ago, any symmetrical system with an appearance of order, dialectical materialism, anti-ism, was enough to hold mankind in thrall. Why not submit to Tlon, to the immense meticulous evidence of an ordered planet? Borges' point is that while pure idealism leads to some silly conclusions, bare materialism is no answer either. Because truth is, the material world yearns for ideas to make it feel orderly. That's why the ideologies of the 20th century were so seductive. They turned a messy, chaotic world into something that felt purposeful. Nobody can raw dog reality. An idea is required to order it. One way to visualize this is a safe where people store their foundational ideas. Cobb's team guides Fisher to open his own, where he discovers that his father wanted him to be his own man, an idea that reorders how he sees his inheritance.
You know, the will means that Dad wanted me to be my own man. Not just to live for him.
Moll similarly took her knowledge that this world is not real and locked it away in a safe inside her childhood dollhouse so she could live in limbo forever. When Cobb wants to leave, he breaks in and changes the idea to its opposite, so she'll agree it's time to wake up. Problem is, the Inception works too well, and Moll becomes convinced that reality too is a dream. Like Fisher, Moll's reality yields to the idea.
She was possessed by an idea. This one very simple idea that changed everything. That our world wasn't real.
Key to understanding the ending is realizing that Cobb too has his own version of this, an idea embedded deeply inside him that orders his reality, his guilt.
What do you feel?
Guilt. I feel guilt, Moll. And no matter what I do, no matter how hopeless I am, no matter how confused, that guilt is always there, reminding me of the truth.
Cobb is consumed with guilt for planting the idea that destroyed Moll and for abandoning his children. So powerful is this guilt that it haunts him across every layer of reality in the form of a very unchill Moll. The idea shapes every layer of reality, dream or not. Therefore, in order to get back to reality, he has to free himself of that idea. He confesses to Ariadne, he acknowledges that his projection of Moll is just a guilt construct, not his wife, and he makes the decision to let her go. This reading reframes a crucial detail. Why can't Cobb see his children's faces? Is it a tell, a sign that he's dreaming and not in reality? Or is it because his guilt prevents him from looking them in the eye? The ambiguity is the point. Both explanations are true because so long as guilt is the governing idea, no reality is real enough. This is why he doesn't care if the top stops spinning. What matters is he's gotten rid of the idea that corrupts any reality. Getting back to the real world while still carrying that guilt wouldn't be enough, because as Borges suggests, reality always yields to the idea that orders it. What new idea has he replaced it with? Maybe it's forgiveness, maybe it's hopefulness about the future, or maybe it's something about not being an old man.
Filled with regret, waiting to die alone.
In some of his stories, Borges took this further. Sometimes ideas order the world, other times they generate it, something Nolan also plays with. So his short story, The Garden of Forking Paths, talks about a guy named Sui Pen who abandoned his post as a governor to pursue two undertakings, to build a labyrinth and to write a novel. He is assumed to have failed both. The book is a rambling mess, and no labyrinth is ever found, until a scholar makes a realization. Quote, Sui Pen may have once said, "I am retiring to write a book," and on another occasion, "I am retiring to build a maze." Everyone imagined these to be two works. Nobody thought that book and labyrinth were one and the same. The labyrinth was never an actual structure, it was the book, and when Sui Pen's descendant Yu Sun goes searching for the scholar who cracked this mystery, Borges describes him navigating a mundane dirt path like a labyrinth, turning left at every fork as if the idea has seeped into the physical world. By blurring the boundary between the physical and mental, Borges is making the point that an idea, the act of writing in this case, actively constructs reality. To put another way, living in the real world means living within the ideas built by the philosophers and storytellers who came before us. If any Nolan film proves that old ideas generate new worlds, it's Inception, a film largely constructed out of ancient myths. For example, the Greek myth of King Minos. The king commissions a labyrinth to contain the monstrous Minotaur, and his daughter Ariadne helps the hero Theseus navigate it using a ball of thread. Moll is the Minotaur, the monstrous force locked away in the deepest core of Cobb's mental labyrinth. Cobb is Theseus, who must navigate the labyrinth to face the monster, and Ariadne is, well, Ariadne. Then there's Orpheus and Eurydice, the myth of a grieving man who descends into the underworld to retrieve his dead wife, and who must ultimately leave her behind. Cobb is Orpheus, Limbo is the underworld, and like Orpheus, Cobb ultimately has to let go. You could even argue that the mechanics of Inception echo the Greek god Morpheus, the god of dreams, who could take any human form and shape the dream world to manipulate the sleeper. The extractors are essentially doing that, inhabiting someone else's unconscious and bending it to their will. These myths are thousands of years old, but so powerful they're still out here doing the work of helping a civilization to understand itself. I mean, that's why Nolan's newest film is an adaptation of one of the oldest myths, the Odyssey. And that's Borges' point about ideas. Something that outlasts every material thing of its era is, by any practical measure, the most real thing there is. And if ideas have that kind of power, then any technology that implants them is one of the most powerful things in the world. For Nolan, cinema is one such technology.
It's the chance to build cathedrals, entire cities, things that never existed, things that couldn't exist in the real world.
Thus, the popular reading of Inception as a metaphor for filmmaking. Just as Inception plants ideas through dreams, cinema plants ideas by operating according to dream logic.
You never really remember the beginning of a dream, do you? You always wind up right in the middle of what's going on.
The same is true of a movie scene. When a scene begins in a bar, for example, you don't watch the characters walk through the door and find a seat. You just cut. They're already mid-conversation or mid-something. You arrived without traveling, just like a dream. And just as a film can have layers of super nerdy, intricate lore and still suck, Inception won't work on Fisher unless it reaches him emotionally.
Plant it deep enough?
No, it's not just about depth. You need the simplest version of the idea in order for it to grow naturally in your subject's mind. It's a very subtle art. And what you have to do is start at the absolute basic.
Which is what?
The relationship with the father.
You can get really granular with this reading. Cobb is the director, the one with the vision whose subconscious shapes the world. Ariadne is the production designer, building the architecture of the dream. Arthur is the assistant director, running logistics. Eames is the actor, inhabiting other people's identities. Saito is the financier, whose money makes the whole operation possible. Fisher is the audience, etc. The seduction of dreams and the seduction of movies are the same seduction, the seduction of ideas, and cinema is one in a long lineage of storytelling technologies by which ideas spread, develop, and do what they've always done, order reality.
It's just pure creation.
But as badly as Borges wanted to believe in idealism, in the primacy of mind over matter, it was always a battle, and one that didn't quite resolve in idealism's favor. His conclusion is perhaps most clearly stated in a short essay, A New Refutation of Time. In it, Borges uses every idealist argument available to prove that time is an illusion. He argues that if reality is just a series of disconnected perceptions, then the past and the future don't actually exist. But in the final paragraph, he resigns the effort and admits defeat, writing, and yet, denying temporal succession, denying the self, denying the astronomical universe are apparent desperations and secret consolations. Our destiny is not frightful by being unreal, it's frightful because it's irreversible and ironclad. Time is the substance I am made of. Time is a river which sweeps me along, but I am the river. It is a tiger which destroys me, but I am the tiger. It is a fire which consumes me, but I am the fire. The world, unfortunately, is real. I, unfortunately, am Borges. This is Borges' final verdict. The material world really is real, and while we can't think our way out of it, we can dream our way through it. Art, philosophy, stories, symbols, these are the labyrinths we construct to protect us from the chaos of existing. We dream the world to make it feel manageable. It's why Cobb needs a new idea to get back to his kids. It's why Gotham needs the myth of the Batman to believe it can save itself. It's why Angier is willing to die every single night for the sake of an illusion. And it's why we need movies to enchant lives that would otherwise be, as Borges put it, nothing but a fire that consumes us. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel because at some point I will be releasing a video on the Odyssey. Also check out my Ko-fi page if you want to support the channel. Hope you guys are having a great summer and catch you next time. Peace.